Greetings, family. Welcome to the African Exodus show. I'm your host, Tierney Cherie, here to you with a new video. Before we get started, I do want to remind you all, if you have not already, please add yourself to my Telegram channel. That way you can get notifications if I post videos, or just a way to stay connected outside of YouTube. With that, let's get started with African and world news. Haiti is experiencing a brush with famine, according to the UN, as they have slashed food assistance. The United Nations World Food Program announced Monday that budget shortfalls forced the cuts even as conditions in Haiti continue to deteriorate. According to WFP, 4.9 million Haitians out of a population of 11.4 million don't have enough to eat, and 750,000 are in dire need of food assistance. Let's repeat those figures. 4.9 million out of 11.4 million. So almost half of the country's population, they are saying, don't have enough to eat. The WFP's operation in Haiti is 16% funded, according to the organization, making it all but impossible to reach its target of providing food aid to 2.3 million people. Needs are peaking, and Haiti is experiencing a brush with famine. What we need to be doing is not cut back, but provide more assistance, said Jean-Martin Burr, WFP Country Director for Haiti, according to The Guardian. They said to fulfill its mission in Haiti for 2023, the WFP urgently requires that the U.S. Urgently requires $121 million US. Now, the interesting thing about this is that you always have claims that African countries don't have enough to eat for its population. Many countries post-colonialism have received the same type of commentary. You never hear these same people ask, well, why can't the people make their own food? And that's important context to always have. Anytime someone wants to put out a statement that a certain population of people do not have enough to eat, the answer should always be, why don't the people have the ability to make their own food? Because we should know that indigenous people, they might not be the most up-to-date on technology, they might not have all the bells and whistles of machinery, but pretty much all of them know how to make their own food, know how to grow their own food. And in the case of Haiti, it's not as simple as we just don't have enough food. The fact is, the lands in Haiti have been bought out for a long time by corporations sponsored by the United States. So let's just review this. Haiti's de facto president gives Haiti to Coca-Cola. This article is talking about Jovenel Moïse, the former president of Haiti, who was assassinated, I believe it was last year, correct? Assassinated. He was not the rightfully elected president, though. The reason why he was assassinated was because he was no longer useful to the regime of the United States. And he was done away with, as they do with many of their puppets whenever they no longer have use for them. However, something that he did really plays into this issue as to why the people in Haiti could be suffering from not having enough food to eat, a basic need, a basic necessity, one of the necessities that all of us share in common. We all need food in order to live. Now, Jovenel Moïse, what he did was sell out his population to the Coca-Cola company. Yes, the same Coca-Cola, you might be drinking their drinks. Sold out the land that belongs to the people of Haiti to this corporation. In the aftermath of February 7th, 2021, on the date on which Jovenel's constitutional mandate the government not only launched a campaign of terror against all those who dared to criticize Moïse's choice to remain in power, because if you don't remember, a lot of time has gone past, but Jovenel Moïse was an illegitimate president, and he was receiving a lot of protest and backlash from the people of Haiti who wanted him out of power, but he decided he was going to just stay in the office of presidency even though his constitutional term had expired. Now, it said that in the aftermath of this, and he was, terrorizing people, and many people were being killed. It also was announced a new cycle of dispossession of the working class and the peasantry. So by a decree on February 8th, 2021, the de facto president is now simultaneously the executive, judicial, and legislative branches of power. He gave the local bourgeoisie as a gift much of the country's agricultural land reserve, some 8,600 hectares, which is the equivalent to 21,251 acres of fertile land in the Arabonite and Central Plateau departments. And keep in mind, Haiti is an island, so 21,251 acres of land on an island that we know is not that huge in the general scheme of land masses. That's a massive thing to do, and has obviously a very, very detrimental effect on the effect of people who are going to be able to take care of themselves, to be able to make for themselves, provide their own food. Now it goes on to say, in a country where nearly 40% of the population suffers from food shortages, this large expanse of land is now to be used to produce stevia as a sweetener for the multinational Coca-Cola. To put the operation in motion, the Moïse government granted the Apaide family, with whom Coca-Cola has contracted, a sum of 18 million gourdes, which is $230,637 US. So this is why people in Haiti are suffering. Not just Coca-Cola. We know a lot of people have sold out this country. We know under Hillary Clinton's tenure as Secretary of State that the people of Haiti were done wrong by her. So this country has been dealt wrong with by many fronts, by many people in the U.S. government. This is not surprising. This is not unique. Unfortunately, until we free the land and free our ability to provide for ourselves, we are literally at the mercy of Western charities who have a stake inside of our own demise. We are at the charity. We're at the mercy of their charity, them being willing to feed us by throwing us a few dollars for some food that's probably not even good for us, probably not even nutritious. This is the dire situation of African people around the world, where we depend on a system that literally hates us, literally tries to kill us, literally tries to deprive us of our basic necessities. We are at the mercy of the same system in order to live. And so unless you break free from that system, you're going to be inside of a situation where you're unable to provide for your needs. So I always want you all to remember, anytime you hear someone say that a certain country is at risk of hunger, dire hunger, the next question that you should ask should be, who owns the land? Because if the people owned the land, they would not be going hungry. Don't be fooled by a lot of these narratives that people don't know how to farm or don't know how to care for themselves. People do. It's a matter of freeing that land so that the people who are on it can actually find a way to practice self-sufficiency and be able to provide for their own needs. So with that, let's go to the next story. A lot of the drama in South Africa has been put to rest because Putin has decided he will not attend the BRICS summit next month in August. Vladimir Putin has agreed not to attend an economic summit in Johannesburg next month that will include China's premier and other world leaders because of an arrest warrant by the International Criminal Court for the Russian president, South African authorities said on Wednesday. Russia and summit host South Africa reached a mutual agreement that Putin would not attend the August 22nd to 24th gathering, which brings together a bloc of developing economies known as BRICS. Though he was initially invited, the office of South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said the development could be viewed as embarrassing for Putin, who is now expected to be the only leader of a country in the bloc that did not attend. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said on Wednesday that Putin has decided to take part in the summit via video link without confirming if he had intended to attend the summit. It ended months of speculation over whether Putin would travel to South Africa, which is a signatory of the Rome Treaty that formed the International Criminal Court and therefore has the obligation to arrest the Russian leader if he sets foot on the South African territory. And it's important to emphasize, although South Africa is a signature of the ICC, they have in previous times not enforced the arrest warrants that the ICC has warranted. So this would not have been a completely new situation. The ICC handcuffing certain leaders, this is why we should not be so quick to sign these international conventions. The United States, who wants to be the so-called arbitrator of human rights in the world, is smart enough to not be a signatory of the ICC. So African countries, in my opinion, should not be, because this handcuffs you whenever you want to do something to exercise sovereignty and your sovereignty is in the way of their agenda. Now, it says South Africa gave strong hints that it would not arrest Putin if he were attended, but had also been lobbying for him not to come to avoid the problem. South Africa said as recently as last week that the Russian leader had been determined to attend, perhaps as a way to challenge the ICC warrant, which Moscow has dismissed. Although Moscow dismissed the warrant, Putin has not traveled to a country that is a signatory to the ICC treaty since his indictment, and analysts have said that the public debate about whether the Russian leader would or would not travel to South Africa was in itself an unwelcome development for the Kremlin. So this saves, obviously, Cyril Ramaphosa from a lot of scrutiny in an international press. As I said, South Africa, this would not be the first time that they ignored an ICC warrant, but I think because Putin is such a pariah to Western interests now, with the Ukraine war going on, it has been branded as a war criminal, and as some people have even branded him as Hitler. For those reasons, this would have put a lot of heat and a lot of scrutiny on South Africa that they probably don't feel like dealing with. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't mean that the United States or other world actors who are trying to pressure South Africa to pick the side of the Western side of the conflict, it doesn't mean that they're going to back off. They're just going to have to find another reason or another basis to put pressure on South Africa. As I said, I think South Africa, among all the BRICS countries, is the scapegoat, because an African joining this alliance is obviously a spit in the face to the Western narrative that they're trying to rescue Africa from itself. And so South Africa exercising such sovereignty with countries that most would say are enemies to the U.S., such as China and Russia, is seen as a threat to their narrative and obviously, ultimately, a threat to Western hegemony. So with that, let's go to the next story. Florida has approved a Black History standard that is decreed as a step backwards. The Florida State Board of Education approved new rules Wednesday for how Black history will be taught in public schools that critics are decreeing as a step backwards. The updated standards say students should learn that enslaved people developed skills that would be applied for their personal benefit, and that in teaching about mob violence against Black residents, instructors should note, quote, acts of violence perpetrated against and by African Americans, meaning anytime you talk about lynching or anytime you talk about the rape of Black women, the violence against our people, you then have to talk about something that Black people did wrong to white people. The standards are the latest development in an ongoing debate in Florida over how Black history should be taught in schools. Earlier this year, the Education Board rejected a new advanced placement high school course on African American studies, arguing it lacked educational value, igniting protests and outrage. Meanwhile, the state legislature has passed a draft of new laws backed by Republican presidential candidate and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who contends the measures remove woke indoctrination and empower parents. The laws ban the teaching of critical race theory, an intellectual movement that examines the ways policies and laws perpetrate the system of racism, and forbid teachers from offering instruction that makes other students feel guilt because of actions committed by others in the past. The changes include teaching elementary school children to recognize Rosa Parks and Thomas Jefferson as individuals who represent the United States. Represent the United States. That's actually true. Thomas Jefferson, a rapist, an occultist, so many things. He does represent the United States. The FEA criticized the approach, saying it excludes a deeper teaching of their histories and struggles in favor of easy identification. So there's one thing that I will say Ron DeSantis is correct about. He says that he thinks that these measures will empower parents. And I actually will agree with him, because if you are an African in the United States and you are living inside of Florida, you should feel empowered to take your child out of the education system. In fact, all of us should feel empowered to take our children out of the education system. See, it's coming from the left and the right. It's not coming from one direction. You have the left who are trying to teach children things that go beyond what they should be there to learn as children. You're not there to learn morals. You're not there to learn how to identify yourself or things like that. You're really there to learn your math. You're there to learn history. You're there to learn different types of maybe artistic things. You're not there to learn things that go down to morality and go beyond the scope of education. Yet that's what the left is pushing. And then the right is they're straight up trying to erase slavery and act like it never happened. They're trying to straight up erase the violence and the crimes of their people against our people. And so if you're getting hit from the left and the right, you have a choice. Your choice that I think you should take is to withdraw your child from the education system and feel empowered as a parent, either whether homeschooling if you have that ability, and if not, I strongly encourage our people, not just in Florida, but all over the world. If you can't homeschool, try to find, and you can't do a private school either, try to find ways to connect with parents outside of the education system and have a community of parents who can assist other parents with raising their children. Because if you think it's bad now, it's just going to get worse. That should be the lesson that our people take from these types of situations. When you're trying to impose one's views on our children, it's up to us whether or not we're still going to allow our children, offer up our children to that system, or whether we're going to withdraw them. And I think it's been a long time coming for our people, for our parents, for our children, that we actually take definitive steps to remove our children from these hostile education environments. With that, let's go to the next story. This is just speculation, but some of you might remember the president of Kenya had come out recently saying that he wants to distance himself from the US dollar, not necessarily abandon it completely, but whenever he's trying to do trade with other African countries, he's trying to not have to use dollars when you can use a local currency. Now, I'm drawing parallels to this, that this could be the reason why Kenya is under so much protest right now, and so let's talk about that. With the police deployed, streets were deserted, and schools closed, and Kenya was gearing up for another tense day of opposition protests on Wednesday. The government has promised to respond firmly to any excesses following deadly violence at previous rallies. The Azimio coalition, led by veteran politician Raila Odinga, has called for 3 consecutive days of demonstrations starting today against the policies of President William Ruto, whom they accuse of exacerbating the rising cost of living in the East African country. Now, just context, everywhere in the world is dealing with a higher cost of living in the aftermath of the Russia-Ukraine war, cuts to supply chains, so many different things that have caused inflation. And we should also remember that the reason why we're in this situation where one country will have an issue and it spreads to all of us around the world, it's because we agreed to be inside of globalization, or at least our governments agreed to globalization. So essentially their economy is tied to the international economy. And if the international economy goes downhill, guess who's going to be hurt the worst? Our economies. So it's not fair to blame the Kenyan president when we know inflation is being felt all over the continent, all over the world. It just hits us differently whenever it hits us because of our position being under the oppression, under the yoke of the system. But it's important for those on the ground to not take this as a time to miss the mark as far as who's the cause of this situation. The cause is the globalists, the cause of those who occupy and own your land. That is the cause, not necessarily a presidential administration. Now it says, for the government, these demonstrations are nothing more than a threat to national security. On Wednesday morning, public schools remain closed at the request of authorities in the country's 3 major cities. In a joint statement on Tuesday, 13 Western countries, including the United States and the United Kingdom, expressed their concern at high levels of violence during the latest demonstrations, urging the various parties to resolve their differences peacefully. So the United States is giving some commentary on Kenya, what they should do. Notice you never really hear any types of statements coming out from other countries about the United States and their protests, how to resolve it. But they feel that led to do this with Ruto. It goes on to say that Ruto enacted a finance bill introducing new taxes at the beginning of July, despite criticism from his opposition and population. Now, again, I don't know this for sure. I did look up this Azimio coalition. A lot of language that to me reflects possibly a civil society situation, and civil society groups, I always say on this channel, that to me is a sign that you have been co-opted by Western interests. So civil society is not something that is inside of the African dialect. This is an idea that comes from the very institutions of white supremacy, the idea being to capitulate to the will of this global order that they're trying to enforce. So that's what the sense that I have from this group. But I'm going to just take a leap and say that it could honestly be that the new president of Kenya is not falling into the graces of Western countries. Not just with his stance on the U.S. dollar, he also came out similar, not as harshly as the president of Uganda, but saying that, you know, he's not worried or concerned about LGBT rights. We know that's another reason why they're trying to infiltrate Uganda. So clearly, Ruto is not doing what they want him to do. And that's the important thing to take away from this. It could be that this is just a protest of people on the ground, or this could be something that's being sponsored by the economic hitmen. And I want you to take note of this is how they operate. A lot of times the economic hitmen, if you haven't read Confessions of an Economic Hitman, look it up on Amazon. Good book to understand when these things happen. But sometimes they just send warning shots. Sometimes it's not that they're going to necessarily do a Gaddafi on you right away and completely overrun your government. Sometimes they'll just sponsor some civil society groups inside of your country, and they'll tell them, hey, you're going to come at the president this way, come at the president that way. Sometimes they'll put an opposition party inside of your country. Sometimes they do things that are less obvious just to send a warning shot that if you want to continue to pursue certain policies, we can take this further. So that's what you should take away from this. Let's go to the next story. This last story isn't necessarily political, but I think it's an important one for you to have in mind. African people, some of you go on vacations. I'm not personally a vacation person. I like traveling, but I'm not the type of like go to a resort type person. Now, some of us pick countries to go to that are hostile to us. And if you know what's going on in that country, you should know that country's hostile to us. So let's talk about what's happening with this woman, this African woman who got in prison in Dubai. I thought we were done worrying, according to the person who wrote the article. I thought we were done worrying about black people being stranded overseas once Brittany Griner was released from a Russian prison. I never thought that, but I'm sure that you did. Now, a Houston truck driver and influencer has been stranded in Dubai for over 2 months, according to Fox 26 Houston. Her story was finally circulated after her mother spoke out to local news, signaling a cry for help to bring her daughter home. Tiara Young Allen, also known as Sassy Trucker online, went on vacation to Dubai from March to May to visit some friends. Her mother, Tina Baxter, told Newsweek the day before the end of her trip, Allen and her friends got into a fender bender in the vehicle they rented. The damage was minimal for both cars involved, and the rental was fully insured. However, the incident led to Allen's friend being detained and held in jail for a week. Baxter said her daughter was invited back to the car rental company to collect her belongings, but was told upon arrival that she had to pay a large sum of money to retrieve her purse and ID. When Allen told the staff that they were in possession of her credit cards, an employee allegedly told her to find a way to make her payment. The two got into an argument. Obviously, if you have my credit cards, then you're telling me to find a way to make my payment. So the two got into an argument, and that's when things escalated. As Alan argued with the man, she claims he became aggressive. Okay, he started yelling and chasing her out of the building. Keep in mind, African women in Dubai, not surprising. She allegedly admitted to her mom that she yelled back at him because she was scared. She was afraid. She was just lost at that point. She was very panicked. When she left, she used whatever money she had to take a bus back to her hotel. She didn't know where she was. She was in a panic mode and afraid. It was at this point the employee raised a cause against Alan with the Dubai police. Even though he initiated the screaming, even though he was trying to extort her out of her money. Alan's mother says the incident resulted in her daughter being thrown in jail, her passport being confiscated. Again, her passport being confiscated, and also being placed on a temporary travel ban. Local activist Cornell X says her only crime was raising her voice. In that country, a female is not even allowed to raise her voice. If she raises her voice, it is punishable by jail time. Don't punish women for doing things a man can do. In Dubai, it's not fair and it's not right. So this is why, number one, you have to know where you are traveling to. Emphasize, you have to know the laws about whatever country you decide to go to, whether you're traveling for vacation, whether you're traveling for business. Because when you're under their jurisdiction, and in this case, the U.S. Embassy isn't even bothering to respond as far as what they're going to do to help her. But whenever you're under the jurisdiction and they feel the power to do what they want with you, they'll treat you like their own people. And understand, having our skin complexion in a country like Dubai, you might not know it, but our people are basically a working class over there. Many African migrants go over there trying to just get some work, and then they basically become relegated to these servile jobs, to something that's very, very much the case in many Middle Eastern countries. And so this should be a straight up warning to all of our people. Be very careful if you are someone who likes to go out on these vacations. Understand, first of all, you're in enemy territory when you're in your own government, but at least in your own government, you could probably get some type of retribution from the system. If you use legal means, you can probably try to assert rights. But when you're overseas, they don't necessarily look at you as having rights, especially when you look like us, because to them, you look like their servants. You look like their maids and their cleaners and the people who aren't dignified inside of their society. So to them, they feel like they can treat you in the same way. So this is just a warning. Hopefully this sister gets back to her home, get back to her family. But I hope all of us be very careful during the summer season, be very diligent to do research on the laws of whatever countries you decide to do. And probably a lot of us go to Dubai. Maybe some of us should stop going to that country so freely, because this isn't the first time I've heard this. This is a very common occurrence. I've seen a whole news story about people, whenever you get out of line inside of that country, they take your passport and they say basically you're stuck here. And in that case scenario, what do? You don't have legal rights in that country. You don't have the means to provide for yourself. So what do you do when your passport has been confiscated by that government? I mean, I honestly don't know what she's doing inside of this situation. So that is it for this week. I hope you all enjoyed. I will see you on the next video.
We are not Africans.
All right.
We are possessed by spirits and demons. We have let another people's spirit take possession of our bodies and take possession of our minds. When we speak, it is not with our African voice. It is with the voice of that demonic presence that uses our lips to speak its own language. Yes. Yes, and we have to recognize this. We are possessed. And if we are to transform ourselves and to transform the nature of our relationship with those who are our masters, we must engage in an exorcism and clear the devils out of our minds. And at this time, then, it'll pay you to read a little bit about demonic possession. And we have to be demonically possessed. Because if we talk about black-on-black violence, self-defeating behavior, self-destructive behavior, then we could not be possessed by a beautiful and wonderful God. We must be possessed by a demon. It's interesting to look at the literature on possession. We have a couple of types of possession. One is called a somnambulistic possession. Somnambulistic. Soma, in this instance, having to do with sleep. You hear it in the word sominex. You know, ambulistic, to move around. Ambulatory, right? So we're talking about people who are what? Sleepwalking. They're not awake, but they're walking around. The body is moving and it is walking in an organized fashion and walking systematically, but the person is still asleep. And in somnambulistic possession, then, the individual's original self has been repressed and displaced, and the spirit, and he identifies with the spirit that possesses him. And his I and the spirit's I are one and the same. We have a lot of that here today. Where the spirit that has been implanted in us, we have taken to be us, and we've identified with it. That is why in defending ourselves, we end up defending the people who rule over us. In defending our ego, we end up maintaining the social structure that has destroyed our ego to begin with. And you see it in our youngsters who will fight and kill in the name of respect, and fight because their egotistic orientation has been insulted. And therefore, in defending their ego, they do not kill the people who destroyed their ego. They kill each other and maintain the ones who destroyed them in the first place in power. And that's why the subtitle of my book, Black on Black Violence, was Black Self-Annihilation in Service of White Domination. We are killing each other in order to maintain this system. We have let ourselves become possessed by a spirit such that when we become aggressive, we aggress against the self instead of those who are the source of our aggressive orientation.